This caver had the worst death possible. In the winter of 1925, a Kentucky cave explorer's greatest discovery became his tomb. Floyd Collins ventured where no one dared, pushed beyond his limits, and touched glory, only to have it slip away in an instant. Trapped 55 feet underground, his fate would captivate a nation, draw thousands to a remote hillside, and expose the dark side of American sensationalism. This is the story of ambition, survival, and a rescue attempt that became a media circus, all unfolding in the pitch-black silence of Sand Cave.
Floyd Collins was another great dramatic story. Collins had been trapped in a Kentucky cave by a falling boulder, and the whole wanted to know from hour to hour what progress his rescuers were making.
Floyd Collins' discovery. In the chilly days just after Christmas 1924, Floyd Collins was poking around the woods near Cave City, Kentucky. He wasn't out for a casual stroll. Floyd was a cave explorer, always on the hunt for the next big underground discovery. Just a stone's throw from a busy road, Floyd stumbled upon a small opening in the ground. It didn't look like much, but Floyd's gut told him this could be something special. He'd been exploring caves since he was a kid, and he had a nose for these things. This little hole, he thought, might just lead to a whole network of underground tunnels and rooms. In the cave business, that was like striking gold. Quick as a whip, Floyd made a deal with the folks who owned the land. If he could turn this hole into a tourist attraction, they'd split the money right down the middle. It was a handshake agreement that had Floyd's mind racing with possibilities. He could already picture crowds of wide-eyed visitors, eager to pay for a peek at nature's underground marvels. Initial exploration. But here's the thing. This wasn't some ready-made cave with a big welcome sign. Nope. What Floyd had found was more like a rabbit hole than a grand entrance. If he wanted to turn this into a real tourist spot, he had his work cut out for him. So Floyd got to work. Day in and day out, he'd squeeze himself into that tight little opening and start digging. It wasn't glamorous work. Picture being stuffed into a tight tunnel, surrounded by dirt and rocks, with barely enough room to move your arms. That was Floyd's daily grind. He'd chip away at the walls, trying to make the passages wider. He'd dig through piles of loose rock, clearing a path deeper into the earth. Every day, he'd come out of that hole, looking like he'd wrestled with the ground itself, covered in dirt, sweating buckets, but grinning from ear to ear. Floyd was a man on a mission. Weeks went by like this. Floyd would emerge from the cave as the sun was setting, grab a quick bite, catch a few hours of sleep, and then dive right back in as soon as the rooster crowed. His family started to worry about him, but Floyd brushed off their concerns. He was sure he was on the brink of something big. Little by little, the cave started to take shape. What was once a cramped crawl space began to open up. Floyd could now shimmy through parts of the cave without having to hold his breath. He evens to see hints of larger chambers deeper in, fueling his excitement and pushing him to dig even harder. But caves are tricky things. They're like living creatures, always shifting and changing. As Floyd dug deeper, the dangers grew. Loose rocks would tumble down without warning. The air got thinner the further he went, and the tight squeezes seemed to get tighter, as if the cave was trying to keep its secrets. Floyd knew the risks. He'd heard stories of caverns and explorers getting lost in endless tunnels, but the promise of what might lie ahead kept him going. He was sure that just around the next bend, just past the next tight squeeze, he'd find a cavern so magnificent it would make all this hard work worth it. What Floyd didn't know was that Sand Cave had other plans. As he pushed deeper into its depths, the cave was setting the stage for a drama that would captivate the entire nation. Floyd Collins was about to become famous, all right, but not in the way he'd hoped. With each foot he advanced, Floyd was unknowingly inching closer to a date with destiny. The cave seemed to be drawing him in, luring him towards a confrontation that would test the limits of human endurance and spark a rescue effort, unlike anything the world had seen before. The accident. On January 30, 1925, as snowflakes danced in the cold Kentucky air, Floyd Collins embarked on what would become his most infamous cave expedition. The weather was a sign, perhaps a warning that Mother Nature was in no mood for visitors. But Floyd, driven by his relentless curiosity and dreams of discovery, paid no heed to such omens. With nothing but a flickering kerosene lantern to light his way, Floyd slipped into the mouth of Sand Cave. The warmth of his breath mingled with the cave's cool air, creating ghostly wisps that danced in the lantern light. As he ventured deeper, the world above faded away, replaced by the eerie silence of the underground. The first part of his journey was familiar territory. Having cleared it by himself, Floyd navigated the narrow tunnel with the ease of a man walking through his own home. He came to the first crevice, a vertical drop that would make most folks turn back. But not Floyd. He lowered himself down, his calloused hands finding invisible holds in the rock face. And then he faced it. The squeeze. Imagine a crack in the earth barely taller than a dinner plate. 9 inches of unforgiving rock that had stopped every explorer before Floyd did in their tracks. It was nature's way of saying, this far and no further. But Floyd Collins wasn't one to take no for an answer. He lay flat on his belly, took a deep breath, and started to push. It was like trying to thread a needle with your whole body. Inch by inch, he wormed his way through the squeeze. His clothes caught on jagged rocks, his skin scraped raw. But Floyd pressed on. Using his feet for leverage, he finally popped through to the other side, gasping for air, but grinning with triumph. Beyond the squeeze, Floyd found himself on a ledge overlooking a narrow pit. This was it, the gateway to the cavern he'd been dreaming of. With his heart pounding, he began the final 80-foot descent. Finally, his feet touched the floor of the main cavern. Floyd stood there, drinking in the sight. He'd done it. He'd gone further than anyone before him, unlocking the secrets of Sand Cave. But as the saying goes, pride comes before a fall. It was time to head back. Floyd began the arduous climb up, his muscles already aching from the journey down. And then, disaster struck. His lantern, his sole source of light in this pitch-black world, slipped from his grasp. It tumbled down the rock face, shattering on the cavern floor far below. In an instant, Floyd was plunged into absolute darkness. Panic threatened to overtake him, but Floyd forced himself to stay calm. He'd been in tight spots before. He just needed to feel his way out. Slowly, carefully, he continued his ascent, using his hands to guide him. But the cave wasn't done with Floyd yet. As he pushed upward, his hand dislodged a rock. It wasn't a big one, but in the confines of the narrow passage, it was enough. The rock tumbled down, wedging itself against Floyd's left leg. He tried to kick it free, but it wouldn't budge. And then, as if the cave itself was conspiring against him, more rocks began to fall. They rained down around Floyd, pinning his hands and trapping his other leg. In a matter of moments, Floyd Collins, the fearless cave explorer, found himself caught in nature's stony grip. There, in the impenetrable darkness, unable to move, Floyd faced the terrifying reality of his situation. He was trapped, deep underground, with no light, no way to call for help, and no one knowing where he was. As the cold began to seep into his bones, Floyd realized that his greatest adventure had just become a desperate fight for survival, the rescue attempts. But, as fate would have it, Floyd's absence didn't go unnoticed for long. About 24 hours after Floyd had ventured into the cave, the property owners grew worried. Along with a plucky 17-year-old named Jewel, they decided to check on the cave explorer. What they found sent shockwaves through the community. Floyd Collins, the fearless caver, was stuck like a cork in a bottle, deep within the earth's clutches. Word spread like wildfire. By noon, Floyd's brother Marshall and his father had arrived at the scene, only to find a growing crowd already gathered at the cave entrance. The quiet Kentucky countryside was suddenly abuzz with worried chatter and frantic planning. It was Homer, one of Floyd's brothers, who managed to worm his way through the treacherous passage to make physical contact with Floyd. Imagine the mix of relief and horror as Homer's hand finally touched his trapped brother's cold skin. Floyd was alive, but his situation was dire. With renewed urgency, rescue attempts kicked into high gear. They tried everything they could think of. One of the first ideas was to use a harness to pull Floyd out. Picture it: rescuers above ground, pulling with all their might on ropes that disappeared into the dark maw of the cave. But it was no use. The more they pulled, the more Floyd cried out in pain. The rocks holding him seemed unwilling to give up their prize. As news of Floyd's predicament spread beyond the local community, something unprecedented began to happen. The drama unfolding in that Kentucky cave captured the imagination of the entire nation. Newspapers plastered their front pages with updates on the rescue efforts. Radio stations interrupted their regular programming to bring listeners the latest news from Sand Cave. Floyd Collins, trapped in his underground prison, had become a sensation. Reporters flocked to the scene, each hoping to get the scoop on the unfolding drama. One particularly enterprising journalist named William Skeets Miller went above and beyond. He managed to squeeze his way down to Floyd's position, bringing with him a lifeline to the outside world, a light bulb. For the first time in days, Floyd saw light, the warm glow illuminating his haggard face and the cruel rocks that held him fast. Skeets didn't stop there. He conducted interviews with Floyd, bringing the trapped man's voice to the anxious public. Floyd's words, tinged with pain and hope, were broadcast across the nation, turning him from a nameless victim into a flesh and blood person that everyone was rooting for. As the days wore on, the area around Sand Cave transformed. What was once a quiet patch of Kentucky wilderness became a bustling hub of activity. Thousands of curious onlookers descended on the site, drawn by the drama and the hope of witnessing a miracle rescue. The clock kept ticking, the crowd kept growing, and somewhere in the depths of the cave, Floyd Collins clung to life, hoping against hope that his rescuers would reach him before it was too late. Cave collapse. As the rescue efforts entered their second week, the atmosphere around Sand Cave was a mix of determination and growing desperation. Rescuers worked tirelessly, driven by the hope of bringing Floyd Collins back to the light of day. But on that fateful Wednesday afternoon, nature decided to throw them a cruel curveball. Without warning, the entrance to the pit collapsed with a thunderous roar. It was as if the cave itself had finally lost patience with the constant intrusion of rescuers. In an instant, the narrow lifeline to Floyd was severed. The crowd above ground watched in horror as dust billowed out of the cave mouth, signaling the devastating turn of events. For a moment, silence fell over the scene. The gravity of the situation hit home. Floyd Collins was now completely cut off from the world above. But the human spirit is resilient, and soon, a new plan was hatched. If they couldn't go through the cave to reach Floyd, they'd go around it. A new rescue attempt began, this time involving the digging of a shaft. Picture it: men working around the clock, pickaxes and shovels flying, as they attempted to burrow straight down through the Kentucky soil to reach Floyd's position. It was a race against time, with Floyd's life hanging in the balance. The shaft grew deeper by the hour, but would it be enough? Would they reach Floyd in time? As February 16th, 1925 dawned, hope still flickered. In the early hours of the morning, around 1:30 a.m., a worker named Brenner made his way down the newly dug shaft. The crowd above held their breath, waiting for news. Floyd's death. When Brenner emerged, his face told the story before he could speak a word. Floyd Collins, the man who had captured the nation's attention and sympathy, was dead. The cave that he had sought to conquer had claimed him in the end. The news spread quickly, casting a veil over the once buzzing rescue site. The carnival atmosphere evaporated, replaced by a somber mood of collective mourning. Floyd Collins had become more than just a trapped caver to many. He was a symbol of human endurance and the unpredictable power of nature. Initially, it seemed that Sand Cave would become Floyd's final resting place. The idea of leaving him there, forever a part of the underground world he loved, had a certain poetic tragedy to it. But for Floyd's family, especially his brother Homer, the thought was unbearable. Months passed, and the world moved on. But Homer Collins couldn't let his brother go. In a final act of brotherly love, Homer had the shaft reopened. It was a dangerous and difficult task, but Homer was determined to give Floyd a proper burial. Finally, after an arduous effort, Floyd's body was brought to the surface. After 17 days trapped in the darkness and months entombed in the earth, Floyd Collins finally saw the light of day again. It was a bittersweet moment, a chance for closure, but also a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. Floyd was laid to rest in a proper burial, surrounded by the family and community that had fought so hard to save him. His grave became a testament to both the perils of cave exploration and the indomitable human spirit that drives us to push boundaries. The saga of Floyd Collins left an indelible mark on cave exploration and captured the public imagination like few events before it. It serves as a reminder of the raw power of nature, the strength of the human will to survive, and the collective compassion that can unite people in times of crisis. If you enjoy this video, please subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this.